Hello, Mavericks. This is Mrs. Hampton. I am super excited to be with you. I love talking about graphs and time. So today we are going to continue talking about bar graphs and how to read them. And one thing that's new and different from yesterday is I showed you kind of at the very end of our lesson. But instead of looking at horizontal bar graphs, we're also going to be comparing those to vertical bar graphs, which is the one that you saw at the very end. So I'm super excited. They are very similar, and it kind of just depends on different ways that people like to use and look and read data. All right, so let's begin. All right, go ahead and get your bow and arrow out. I can read and analyze data in vertical and horizontal bar graphs. Boo! All right, team, so look right here. This is a horizontal bar graph. This is very similar to what we had yesterday. What is some information that you can see, that you notice on this bar graph? What is some information that you notice? All right, you might notice the title right here. You might notice the data that was collected in this survey. And down here, you might notice the number of coins from each country. Anything else that you notice? Any observations that you can make about the data that is shown? Can you tell which country had the highest number of coins collected? How do you know? And how many coins were collected from the United States? If you said 10, that's correct, right? Because you can go up and you can see that data right here on your graph. Okay, how about how many coins were collected from Mexico? If we were to read this chart from Mexico, you find where the end line is here, and then you follow that down. So yes, so we had 8 lines or 8 coins collected from Mexico. So this is that horizontal bar graph. All right. Let's go here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this short clip on bar graphs.
Reading data in bar graphs. This graph shows the number of minutes it rained during the last week. The days of the week are labeled horizontally, and the counts are labeled vertically. We want to answer a few questions based on the information in this graph. On which day of last week did it rain for the longest time? The count increases as we go up, so the day with the longest bar is the day on which it rained the longest. And this is the case on Tuesday. The bar for Tuesday ends at 2 parts over 40. So it rained for 42 minutes that day. How many fewer minutes it rained on Tuesday than on Monday and Wednesday combined? To make the comparison, first we need to combine the totals for Monday and Wednesday. According to the graph, it rained for 25 minutes on Monday and 30 minutes on Wednesday. So their combined total is 55 minutes. Since 55 is greater than 42, we know it rained for fewer minutes on Tuesday than on Monday and Wednesday combined. But how many fewer minutes? To find out, we calculate the difference in time between 55 and 42. 55 is 50 plus 5. And 42 is 40 plus 2. So we subtract 40 from 50. That equals 10. Then we subtract 2 from 5. That equals 3. Then we combine our results. 10 plus 3 equals 13. Now we can say that it rained for 13 fewer minutes on Tuesday than on Monday and Wednesday combined. In this lesson, you learned how to answer questions about information in a graph.
All right, so we are going to be doing that exact same thing today. We're going to be taking data that we have, and you can either look at data that you have from your homework and remembering page or from the workbook pages, either that you were able to get home or that you are downloading or that you are just pulling up on your computer and reading as you do this. All right. So if you look at this next graph, I want you to look at this graph and I want you to think, how is this bar graph different from the bar graph that we just looked at on coins in my collection? How is it different? Okay. Yeah, the bars in this graph in the first graph go across and these bars go up and down. So let's take a look at this one and I want you to see if there's some questions that we can answer. Okay, similarly to what we saw in the last bar graph, you can see that in this one there are, how many roses are there? So you're going to find the word rose. Okay, so you have rose, daisies, violets, tulips, and lilies. And how many roses were there? Just like we did in the horizontal bar graph, we're going to find that line where it ends, and then we're going to follow it to the number. So in this case, there are 7 roses in my garden. Okay, how about lilies? How many lilies are there in this garden? Okay, so you're going to find where on your graph it shows you information about lilies, and then you're going to follow that along to the line that's going to direct you to tell you that there are 3 lilies. Okay, now just like we did in the last one, we're going to do kind of a problem. So how many more violets are there than lilies? So what you're going to do is you're going to look at that data. So we're looking at how many more, right? This is a comparison question. So how many more violets than lilies? So you look right here and we said we had 8 violets and 3 lilies. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my whiteboard. Boop. And we're going to take a look. I like to make, as you know, right, we like to make our comparison bars when we have comparison problems. So we knew that we are comparing violets to lilies. And we know that we always want to put that larger number in the larger top comparison box. Okay, and the smaller number of lilies in the lower comparison box. And these work again just like Math Mountains do. Okay, so it did tell us how many violets did we have. We had 8 violets. And did it tell us how many lilies we had? Yes, we had 3 lilies. So we're looking for how many more violets, or I said fewer, right? How many fewer And these, remember, can always be fewer or more. That's where that difference comes in. How many fewer lilies than violets? So as we know, you can use your comparison bars as to help guide your equation. So it's going to be 8 violets, take away 3 lilies, gives us how many fewer lilies that we have than violets. So some of us might know automatically 8 minus 3 equals 5. Some of us like to make drawings to show and represent our work. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 8. And I'm going to just subtract 1, 2, 3, which leaves me with 5. So either way, we know there are 5 fewer lilies than violets. Another way we can say this is that there are 5 more violets than lilies. Okay, so you can say them in different ways, right? Depending on how you want to read your data. What is another comparison word problem that we could create from this data? Let's take a look. Okay, so if you go back to our data, I see that I have, let's say I wanted to come up with a word problem with including, let's do a little math on this. How about how many more daisies should I get if I wanted to have as many daisies as I have violets? Okay, so for this one, you want to find your data first, and you want to say, I have 4 daisies. So if I'm looking at my 4 daisies, and then if I want to have as many daisies as I have violets, I can use my bar graph and count up, right? I would have to get 1, 2, 3, 4. Or I can also create an equation. So if I look at, I have daisies. If I say I have 4 daisies, plus I'm looking at how many unknown to get to 8 lilies, then my equation will look something like this. I can find and count up, to that unknown. So here's my daisies. Here's my lilies. 4 plus unknown equals 8. Well, we know 4 plus 5, 6, 7, 8 equals 8. So my unknown is I would need to get 4 additional daisies in order to have the same number of lilies. Okay, so it would be a very similar problem. All right. And you can also see I was able to also just use the data chart, which is another reason that we really like bar graphs, because it's easy to read and understand data on a bar graph. Okay, so let's talk about today's assignment and some of the things that we are going to be working on. All right, so right here, this is the assignment that if you have your homework and remembering book, or I'm sorry, your math workbook, this is the page that you're going to see on page 238. Okay, now what we want you to do on this is we want you to think about comparison statements. Okay, so you're going to use this horizontal bar graph, right? And we remember that horizontal is kind of like horizon. Okay, and that vertical, you think of those vertical pillars. So this is that horizontal. If you're like rowing on a lake in the horizon. Okay, so we're looking at our horizontal bar graph. Okay, and we are going to be looking here. So with this data, you are going to write a greater than statement. Okay, so that can be really anything. So you can look at, right? This is the title is awards we earned. So this is how many awards did Hal earn? Well, he earned 9. And like I said last time, I like to put my data number kind of in those charts. How many did Jory earn? Right? You can read, where does that end? 4. Okay, you can continue with that data. I don't want to do all of your homework for you, but I want to show you that you can put that here. Next, your job is to create a greater than statement. There's many different greater than statements that you can create from this data. One idea that you can do, if you just want to look at totals, okay, that can be one sort of a greater than or comparison statement. Additionally, you can create different types of equations. So you could say the numbers of Jory has 4 and 6, then you could say the number of awards that Jory and Carrie earned is greater than the number of awards that Pat earned. So if you want to kind of challenge yourself, you can think of different ways to create equations to write this greater than statement. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. I will give you an example right now, but you cannot use my example that I'm going to write down. But I just want to make sure that this is very clear for you so you understand your job today. So you're going to say, Hal, right, the number of awards that, and I'll just leave it blank so you can see that blank earned is greater than the number blank earned. So I'm going to let you kind of fill in. I would have put Hal, that Hal earned is greater than the number that Jory earned, because you can see that Jory only earned 4 and Hal earned 5. Okay, your next step in this piece is to create a vertical bar graph from the horizontal bar graph below. Now remember, okay, again, the most important piece, I'm going to let you create this data and information, but what number do we want to make sure we start with? Okay, we want to make sure that we always start with 0, because if someone had not earned an award, their data would not go up. Okay, so you would have 1. Now here is kind of where you're going to put those numbers, and if you didn't know that already, you could kind of infer that by looking at the number of lines here, and you can see the data goes up to 10 here. And then we have 4 people in this survey or in this data chart who earned awards, and that's Hal, Jory, Carrie, and Pat. Down here, you have 4 spaces to put their data and information. Like I said last time, I think it's really helpful if I'm putting Hal here first. I find it very helpful to make sure that I make a line, and you'll find this out like after, right? After you filled in your information, I like to make my line next to that number first, and then I draw that graph down. Okay, it's much easier to read. And I also like to put that number up here because it really helps as we get into different types of word problems and equations with this data to have those numbers up and ready for you, so you're not spending time creating those numbers and rethinking that data every single time. All right, team. So I think you are ready. Is it going to show? To do this. For some reason, it's not coming, so I'm going to pull you back here. Okay, so for your workbook pages, okay, I would encourage you can write or create different types of word problems based on these types of, on this data. And you can also create different types of equations. So if you wanted to say the United States has how many fewer coins were collected from the United States than Canada, Mexico, Japan, and India combined. Or you can say something like how many more coins were collected from Japan than India. So again, this can be kind of an oral, okay, or like an oral exercise that you can share with a family member or a sibling, or it can be something that you write out on your own scratch paper, that you type out on Google Classroom, that you share on Seesaw. It's really up to you on how you want to share your work. I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you're showing integrity and making sure that you're doing your very best, even though your teacher isn't in the same room as you, okay? Just taking pride in the work that you create. And then over here, you can create your own bar graph. If your choice, once you feel good with this, again, just like yesterday, you can download one of these sheets, you can make your own, but if you're feeling really good, I challenge you to find other information that you can count and collect. I was even just thinking Kenzie has these perler beads, so I was going to sort the colors here. So I had dark purple, kind of this turquoise, white, orange, and light purple. And so I can count that. You can see there's a lot of data and information here that I could use to really challenge myself and do some fun math problems with that. Additionally, maybe you have Legos and maybe you would want to sort them by shape. Okay, or you can sort them by color. So right here I can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 dark blue, 3 light blue. Okay, so and again, you can do that with lots of things if you have buttons or different shapes of rocks or silverware, whatever you have available to you to count and graph and analyze and read. If you are choosing to do the homework and remembering pages out of your book, that is going to be on page 147. Today, you're just reading these horizontal bar graphs, and then you're going to use these bar graphs to complete the sentences. So 2 fewer children play the blank than the guitar. So I would go up to the guitar, and I would find out which one has 2 fewer. So right now I see 4 people play the guitar. If I know that 2 fewer than 4 is 1, 2, then 2 fewer children play the what? Who only plays 2 fewer? The drums. So you would fill that in with the drums. So right here, you're just reading this bar graph. And on the back, this is a revisit to some of the work that we've done in previous units. Okay, so great luck with that. I'm super excited to see the work and challenges that you guys are sharing and creating on the different platforms that we have available to you. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out, and happy graphing, Mavs.